Most people believe that success and prosperity are states that come and go, highlights, low points, inevitable cycles of advance and retreat. This belief is common. And it is precisely this that prevents permanence. Because success wasn't meant to be an emotional high. Prosperity wasn't meant to be an event. Abundance wasn't meant to be something that comes and goes. When this happens, it's not because life is unstable. It's because the internal state is still. That's the law. Nothing external can be sustained when the internal fails to provide support. Nothing grows when the field that receives it is unstable. Nothing remains when the nervous system goes on alert in response to expansion. What you call loss, almost always an ability to sustain. And support is not strength, it's stability. A permanent state does not arise from continuous effort. It arises from continuous consistency. As long as you believe that prosperity depends on doing more, it will continue to require too much energy to stay, because the problem was never the amount of action. It has always been the quality of the internal state. Prosperity does not respond to intensity. Responds to emotional stability. It always works like this. A permanent state begins when the body learns that growing is safe. Not only is it possible, safe, most people even want to prosper. But internally, it associates growth with tension. Responsibility weighs heavily, visibility at risk. The body learns this early on. And it reacts. When something good starts to happen repeatedly, the system goes on alert. As stability increases, the mind begins to look for flaws. When abundance approaches, the fear of loss arises. None of this is conscious, but all of this is crucial. You don't lose prosperity because of mistakes. You lose because your internal state doesn't recognize permanence as something natural. What is not natural to the body cannot be sustained. This is inevitable. A permanent state requires a nervous system trained to stay, not to react. Reacting is a matter of survival. Sustainability is prosperity. While your internal state still functions as if everything is temporary, life confirms this expectation. The world responds to what you silently expect. And silence is more powerful than any statement. The basis of a permanent state is stabilized identity. Not the stated identity, the lived identity. Who are you when nobody's watching? Who are you when something goes right? Who are you when nothing is happening? That's where the real command lies. Most people behave in a certain way when they are climbing, and another one when it has already arrived. This creates internal ruptures. Disruptions create instability. Instability breaks continuity. An aura of lasting success is born when there is no difference between who are you before, during, and after the expansion. This is not indifference. It's inner maturity. Maturity does not react to change. She absorbs. Absorption is what creates permanence. A permanent state does not need to be defended. It doesn't need to be restated. It doesn't need explaining. He's simpliant, and the world adjusts to that. You can tell when someone has entered that state. The rhythm changes. Speech slows down. Decisions become simple. There's no rush. There is no anxiety. There's no need to prove it. Because proving something is a sign of instability. The person who claims it doesn't have proof. It remains. This remaining still is not stagnation. It's profound. Superficial states require constant stimulation. Deep states are self-sustaining. Lasting prosperity is profound. She doesn't depend on emotional peaks. It depends on continuous internal alignment. As long as thought, emotion, and action are not aligned, the state is breaking down. The thought says, I can. Emotion says, it's not safe. Action hesitates. This internal conflict drains energy. And drained energy doesn't sustain anything great. True reprogramming happens when the body learns a new response, not when the mind learns a new concept. When something good happens and you remain calm. When something grows and you don't contract. When things stabilize and you don't become overly cautious. These moments train the system. The system learns. This is safe. This can stay. I support it. This learning doesn't happen at large events. It happens in micro moments. It depends on how you react to a compliment, in the way you receive recognition. It depends on how you handle small gains. If you minimize, if you suspect, if you contract, the body records and repeat. Lasting prosperity requires a clean reception, without guilt, without fear, no self-sabotage. That's not arrogance. It's about consistency. Receiving without collapsing is emotional maturity. Most people want more, but he doesn't realize that he's not yet able to sustain what he already has. The permanent state is not created by the next level. It is created by how you maintain your current level. If you are living under stress right now, it will bring tension wherever it goes. That's the law. The aura of lasting success is unaffected by its environment. She influences him. But this only happens when the internal environment is stable. While you are still negotiating your identity with the outside world, the state does not settle down. Constant negotiation creates chronic instability. A permanent state is born when you stop splitting up. Internal division consumes energy. Wholeness of the preserve. Energy conservation is what allows for continuous growth. You don't need to generate more energy. We need to stop wasting. Waste happens every time you overreact. That explains too much. That's overly justified. Excessive reactions indicate internal insecurity. Insecurity undermines stability. The aura of lasting success is silent. She doesn't announce herself. She is not for sale. She doesn't ask. She occupies it. This occupation is not physical, it's energetic. It's when you enter a space without needing to adapt, without needing to diminish oneself, without needing to inflate yourself. You simplify. This being is the state. And permanent states do not need to be maintained by effort. They become automatic. Automatic doesn't mean unconscious. It means integrated. Integration is when there is no longer conflict between who you are and what you experience. When that happens, prosperity ceases to be something you seek, and it becomes something that accompanies you. To accompany is different from to pursue. The pursuer is always behind. Those who are following along are on the same page. The rhythm of lasting prosperity is calm. It always has been. Haste disrupts the rhythm. Anxiety distorts perception. Fear shortens vision. None of these states sustains abundance. Abundance like space. Emotional space. Interior space. Space only exists where there is calm. Calmness is not passivity. It's internal control. Internal control is not repression. It's a domain. Mastery comes from consistently providing consistent answers. Every time you choose not to react, something gets stronger. Every time you choose not to contract, something stabilizes. Every time you remain whole, something takes hold. That something is the state. A permanent state is not created in a day. But it doesn't require years either. He demands identity consistency. Identity is not what you say it is. It's what you can sustain under pressure. When things go wrong, who are you? When something goes right, who are you? If the response changes, the state is not permanent. The world responds to internal predictability. No to routine, to consistency. When your presence is emotionally predictable, the world relaxes around you. People trust. Opportunities remain. Flows stabilize. This doesn't happen by chance. An aura of lasting success creates security. And security is a silent invitation. Nothing takes root in unsafe environments. If your world is still swaying too much, it's not because something is missing outside. It's because the state hasn't settled in yet. Settling down doesn't mean stopping. It's about stabilizing the base. A stable emotional foundation allows for continuous building. Without a foundation, everything becomes a peak. Peaks are tiring. They tire the body. They tire the mind. And a tired body cannot sustain anything for very long. The permanent state is rested, not in the sense of inertia, but in the sense of not fighting against oneself. Fighting against oneself consumes vital energy. When you stop fighting, the state organizes itself. This is the point where prosperity begins to take hold. Not because you called, but why didn't he expel him? Many people drive away prosperity without realizing it. Guilty, scared, with suspicion. Each of these emotions communicates instability, and life responds by moving away, not as punishment. As an adjustment, life always seeks balance. When you become internally balanced, she approaches. This is inevitable. A permanent state does not depend on favorable circumstances. He holds his own in any scenario. Not because it ignores reality. But why doesn't he collapse in front of her? To collapse is to lose the state. To sustain oneself is to remain whole. The permanent state does not collapse. It absorbs impact. Absorbing impact is a sign of energetic maturity. This maturity doesn't come from age. It comes from the silent practice of self-mastery. Self-mastery is not rigid control. It's inner freedom. Freedom not to react. Freedom not to have to explain oneself. Freedom from rushing. These freedoms create space. Space creates expansion. Sustained expansion leads to prosperity. Sustained prosperity becomes the norm. And when something becomes normal internally, it becomes permanent externally. This always works. You don't need to convince yourself of that. The body recognizes it. Perhaps now you'll notice something different. A feeling of settling down. A denser calm. A firmer presence. This isn't excitement. It's stabilization. The state begins like this, without noise. No announcement. Just an internal realization that you don't need to rush. You support it. And when you hold on, life remains. That's the law. This is inevitable. This always works. By the time we finish here, something has already fallen into place. Not as an idea, as an identity. His presence has changed. His pace changed. Your field has changed. And now, prosperity finds a place where it can stay.